watching this on YouTube, just skip forward 2 minutes. Nine people on a YouTube. Hi, YouTubers. Oh, now it's 2, so I guess the 9 was fake, according to CueCam. We need backing music for this first 2 minutes, but it's about to start. When you are making software demos, how do you make it not boring, and how do you show everything clearly, and most importantly of all, how do you make it not crash in the middle of the demo? Welcome to my 41st Squares TV App Lab, where I'm just fiddling with the format, seeing what I can do. Hopefully the sound is coming through. Hopefully I'm in sync. This is where I talk about Shoot, Video Pencil, Beat Sheet and CueCam Presenter. We've got a private Zoom over here and we've got a public YouTube stream. Put questions in chat on YouTube, but I'll try and get to them, and put up your hand on Zoom if you've got something to say. I may be out of sync, I am told. So what we'll do, hopefully that's better, but who knows. Right, so last week, just a quick recap, if you care. The website is looking pretty good now for CueCam Presenter, so watch out for an announcement on that soon. And also, I figured out what was going on with CueCam's audio. You can see there's still, I know what's going on, but we've gone from what the heck to nearly there. So I thought I'd just take you through that. So I was literally keeping this tally of each launch, I'd launch it. Sometimes it was okay. Sometimes it was silent. So this is my virtual mic cable that you launch CueCam, and that gives you a virtual mic that goes into other apps. It's how I'm playing the music. It's how you're getting my microphone. And there's a built-in delay calculator to figure out the delay. So yeah, I guess we're not quite 100%, but I know why. But sometimes it was super crackly as well. When it worked, it had this long delay, which didn't make sense. I was like, oh, well, I was using this sort of convenient way of routing the audio that was there was a bit of lag introduced by that. So I thought, well, I'll get rid of that. I'll make a low-level audio unit, and then we'll do it in a much lower level way. And then for some reason, it didn't solve the delay problem. So to cut a long story short, it was actually 2 problems pushing against each other. And so the times when it did work was just, it sort of coincidentally, those 2 problems had balanced each other out. So I was pulling my hair out, and it sort of turned out to be 2 different things. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview because I love describing this stuff. So I use an audio cue to send data to the virtual mic, and that has a timeline that just goes forwards, right? So the whole time is just ticking. And each time so I'm taking, So every so often, yeah, so I'm sort of like following, so I've got my audio chain. So I've got like the microphone input, and that's sort of sending buffers, and it's putting them on that into this audio queue, and then we're taking them out every so often. But what was happening was, when it was silent, the buffers coming from the microphone, so the playhead was sort of here, but I was putting buffers like back here. And so it was always, as it moved forwards, that was always going to be behind. So we were just never getting any buffers. They were just coming in too far behind. And that was what happened if this timeline part happened to kick off first. But the way I was taking stuff from the microphone, it's sort of like just creating this pile of buffers on its own. So each time it gets some audio, it sort of puts them into this little pool, and then it's sort of like, this is what's going up here, and being seen by the audio queue. But if this happened to start first, then it would be way ahead. If this sort of like, for whatever reason, sort of launched first, it would actually be, you'd have the playhead, but actually it was like it already had like too many buffers, so it was sort of like all the things that were coming in were kind of ending up in the future. So then that's what created that delay. So basically, depending on this quite unpredictable startup process of whether the virtual mic was kind of like set up and this timeline was kicked off first, or the virtual mic and started like collecting buffers. If that started collecting buffers before the other thing happened to be ready, it would just always be in the future. If it started sort of kind of after the thing had got started, then it was never going to have a buffer in time. And then the crackle is, if we happen to have one of these buffers like halfway across, so you get audio, like this bit of audio, and then the rest is silence. And that just results in like, so it's all about like making sure that we always have the sort of just the right synchronization between those timelines. And so I've gone from complete hair pulling out on that to, okay, I understand the systems involved here. I have a new issue, which is I created an audio unit on Mac, which actually like not only stops videos playing normally within CueCam, but also anywhere else on my Mac, like any QuickTime videos, it won't play if CueCam is doing the thing. So, hey, we've still got problems to solve. So hopefully my audio, it does seem like my audio sync is pretty good today. It's been so bad recently for the longest time that I'm just pleased to even be like, 90% there. But yeah, please let me know, and I'm sure you will. We are still getting some pretty aggressive. Well, I think with macOS Sonoma, we've also got another set of problems coming in. So I did a lot of optimization on performance. So I rebuilt the audio, like the video pipeline, I rebuilt the audio pipeline, a new version of macOS came out. It's really hammered the performance. So I'd put a lot of work into performance, which is now sort of like, I think I need to sort of start all that again. And what I am seeing I think it's something to do with Sync. It is spawning millions and millions of threads when I don't know why. There's a sort of layers of the system that I don't have control over. I'm just figuring it out. I sort of like reached out to Oliver at Mimo Live as well. He sort of said, they're using some different technologies to what I'm using. But that was not cutting a long story short. Point is, after a lot of pain, you can see I've got smooth video. I'm not dropping frames. It's not clipping. It's not being weird. It's super silky. We've got a lot on my nice DSLR footage, and the audio is feeling good. We're nearly there on that. I'm sort of confident enough to use it. So let's talk about Shoot next. So Shoot Pro webcam, which lets you use your iPhone as a webcam. Right. So I've started on log support for Shoot, which is actually a relatively straightforward thing, just like pick the format if it's in the setting. And then the UI will just be like, turn it on in settings, but it's still sort of, I sort of try and do it in 10 minutes, but then, you sort of get bogged down in it's got to be translated into 6 languages. I've got to make sure it's sort of limited to the right plan. I'm sort of have to think about like, do I want to factor this into, say, like ability to add a LUT as well? Like, do I just want to give you log and you figure out how to turn that back into the right color? Or like, do I do you want to sort of allow you to sort of bundle a LUT into Shoot, and then how does that user interface work? Does it happen through the browser? Do you drag it on? How do you get it on your phone? This and that. So it's a potentially deep thing that sort of looks, or really I just have to turn on a format setting on the video feed, and that will sort of give you the basic thing. But yeah, so it's not quite there yet, but meanwhile, I do have this burning desire building inside me to redo the way Shoot works to quite a major extent. So, because it did start out as just, I put the Apple preview video on the screen, and then you just mirrored it over your USB. And then it sort of got special support for HDMI and AirPlay connections, where I'd sort of like make sure it was an isolated thing and it was always the right aspect ratio and it never got any overlays or anything, and we could support audio. And then it got NDI, which sort of adds in another layer. It's sort of like encoding the data in some other subsystem. And now it works with Video Pencil Camera and CueCam Presenter, which is another sort of hard, an encoding stream, and those aren't quite consolidated. So if you were sending it to 2 different places, which is possible, it would also be encoding all of that video twice as well. So your phone starts to get very hot at that point. But like different layers, the plain mirroring, I can't like get in there and process the image, whereas the HDMI and the other connections I can add stuff into there. So it's I need to think about how to approach that, because I do want to add a saturation control, like a color, how colorful do you want this image to be, and I do want to add LUT support. LUT, if you're not familiar, like a lookup table, so that you can sort of like, so what you use a sort of a color profile on your camera that is, it's quite flat, but it means that you get a lot more information in the highlights usually, which then you sort of have to recolor back to look realistic. So it's sort of using that color data instead of just as the real color, it's using it as like a proxy that allows it to sort of like perceptually give you more data, and then you have to sort of apply this thing afterwards. So if you know what you're doing with OBS or Ecamm, like CueCam supports it as well, you can add a LUT on in your software, but it would be nice to be able to support that in the app, because it might be a bit confusing if someone sort of turns it on and can't use it. And I do need that saturation control, so it's all sort of connected to the same technology stack. So that's some progress with Shoot. I'm also, the external camera thing with Shoot, it's there, but the only thing I haven't done is unplugging and plugging in a camera and making sure that's okay. Because the thing with the assumption you have when you have a phone is the camera, it's just once it's there, it's there. Like if it's there on launch, it's not going anywhere. Whereas if it's a USB camera, you do have to sort of keep an eye on if it's been plugged in, unplugged, and just to make that UX right. And I fixed the thing where it was like, the orientation is like, you're sort of like assuming that if the phone's upside down, you need to flip the image upside down, but actually that's not a valid assumption if the webcam is somewhere else and not attached to the phone. So a couple of things with that. So I can't just sort of like throw it out there without a little bit more love, unfortunately. But yeah, that's where we are with Shoot, and that work is also going into Video Pencil as well. So let's talk about software demos. I promised software demos. I'm going to jump in. I've done a decent bit of content for this today. So where are we up to? 10 past. Let me know if I'm talking too fast. Let me know if you've got questions as we go. Hey, YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're not subscribed, or to be honest, like and subscribe. This is the Beat Sheet channel. I'm going to be switching over to the CueCam Presenter channel soon, so it's fine if you don't want to subscribe. But I think liking would be quite nice. I think that I think we're not at the level where it's getting recommended by any algorithm, so fine, it's fine. So let's come into here. So software demos. I'm missing my first slide. So with software demos, so say you've got an app or you've got a piece of software. It could be on the web, it could be on your phone, it could be on a computer. I didn't even think about phone for this. How are you going to sort of talk about how the software works? So the first thing I want to talk about is how tempting it is to favor a sort of feature by feature guide. So like you open up the manual for something and it's obviously written by an engineer, and it's like, this is how you turn on this subsystem. And you're like, what? But how do I use it? Because it is important to document the features individually, but that's not the whole picture. You need to think about the journeys your user needs to take and help them solve a problem from beginning to end. And this will usually cover a lot of, section of features of your app, but also things outside your app as well. So you sort of need to be thinking about that if you want to communicate something well. So as an example, like a camera maker might document like how to make aperture adjustments and go into great detail on the process of changing the setting and what the ranges are. But if someone's asking like, how do I make more of my picture in focus, which I mean, just even in terms of search engine optimization, like people are searching for that sort of thing. They're not saying, how do I change the aperture on my I know how to, like if you know to ask that question, you can probably figure out how to do it. But if it's like, how do I keep this in focus? Then the manual or the guide needs to explain the relationship between ISO, the shutter speed, the aperture settings, and sort of tell you, okay, if you want more in focus, you're basically going to need more light. So like by stopping down the shutter to get more in focus, you're going to get less light in your image. So you need to bump up the ISO or you need to increase the shutter speed. And that sort of depends. That sort of depends on what sort of action you're filming. So if it's sports, you're just going to need a super high shutter speed, but you'll be in daylight. So you sort of need to sort of take them up, find out a little bit more information, give them some options. But you're sort of like, it's not just adjust the aperture. It's like, okay, for sports, you're going to have a lot of light, but so you can have a low shutter speed. For something that's quite still, you can sort of have a longer exposure and get more light that way. So that's the sort of like, that's what is the user trying to do rather than I'm getting distracted by messages, so I'll just pin a couple up. I see one from Heart Raise Media saying hello from Kenya. That's exciting. And do videos, right? So I see Quincy saying, as a disabled customer, it's getting a little easier to. I guess maybe I missed when you said this. Do the videos in a different way for disabled customers. This is I heard a really good just as an aside, I heard a really good podcast on like alt tags on web pages and how most people aren't like filling those in, but actually what's really delightful is when you put some fun stuff in those sort of like secret like Easter egg descriptions of what's going on. So when someone is using a screen reader or something, then they sort of get a little bit of delight instead of just disappointed that the web page is just not made with them in mind. The thing I think, Quincy, if I guess like the question for me is always like there are different disabilities and they require different types of support. So it's sort of like I tend to kind of wait for someone to say, I'm trying to use it in this setting in this way. Like any feature that I do, I tend to kind of like wait and find out what someone isn't able to do before I try and solve the problem. Because I think sort of general accessibility, it's sort of, there's best practices, make sure that you have like screen reader compatible stuff. But then for like something like Shoot, that like audio describe the image so that someone knows that it's pointing the right way. There's all these sorts of things, and that does become like a user. It becomes a bit more of a design problem. So I find it quite hard to solve some of these things in generalized way, especially with video where it is very sort of specific. And I'm trying to like picture. I can't really picture how people are using it. So do like reach out, like if you've got a specific use case that you'd like me to do a better job of. But talking about, documentation, it just means it is useful to create personas. So these are different user profiles with different goals, different levels of experience. So if you can be thinking about that, but you don't have to like, I've worked in companies where it's a whole exercise and they have walls and they have profile pictures and they have histories, and you can do that. And you can actually do that with ChatGPT a bit as well. You can sort of say, generate me some personas, and that can be quite a good way of getting a bit of a cross section of humanity to help you think about who you're talking to. Certainly for me as a developer, it's quite hard to sort of get out of my own perspective on these things, but it's really important for good documentation to sort of get out of that. So with CueCam, which is this, which I am currently, this is how I'm doing this. You can just create different documents for different demos. So it's just a sequence of cards. So just like think about what the steps someone needs to follow and just sort of put them across some cards, and you've got yourself a little script, and you can add some little titles. I've got my little titles on these just to sort of so you know what section we're in. And at the most basic level, you can share your screen or a window and just show someone what to do, and that's cool. Like, the nice thing with CueCam is you're not going to have to sort of go through that whole rigmarole of can you see my screen? You know, like you can just go, okay, now look at my desktop, and then you can be talking, you can come back, you can be picture in picture down in the corner, and that's all very seamless. But you can also sort of structure that in a script. So, you know, there's sort of like, you know, run with scissors mode, just, well, do I mean that? You can just sort of like wing it a little bit and just sort of put some notes and run through. And that's often kind of what I do. And with CueCam, it's really, I find it really useful to just do these little quick live run throughs, and then if it doesn't work the first time, I just do it again, and then I'm sort of refining my script. If I'm sort of like stuttering on something a little bit and I can't quite find the phrasing, I can just put that into my teleprompter. So CueCam gives you the teleprompter view, so you can sort of see what you need to say. That's what I'm kind of reading off right now, although I've gone off script. So you can what I find is some stuff I just want to take you through it, but sometimes like you might want to think and try a couple of different ways of phrasing it to make it super clear and super concise. And you do want to keep these, I think, to make it not boring. Just like if you're umming and ahhing and you're not quite ready and you're sort of like meandering a bit and you're sort of like not quite sure what you're trying to explain, it's like it's really painful to watch. So if you can be like a bit snappy with it, it's quite good. With CueCam, you know, do a few takes so that like the one that you end up with is quite snappy, and you've figured out what the language is, and you can just sort of run through it. So to record this, currently CueCam doesn't record. I mean, it's not even out yet, but it will record. But for now, QuickTime is the easiest way to record. So all you got to do in QuickTime, should we just show this? So if I go to my desktop, start QuickTime. By the way, if I do freeze today and disappear, just give me a few seconds, and I will return. But I'm in CueCam, and it's got some pretty gnarly memory stuff going on, so it sort of ends up just getting a bit messed up. But you can go in QuickTime Play. You can go like new movie recording, and then you get this. You get this. So this is the CueCam output. So this might get a bit feedbacky. I'll try and make the window smaller. Yeah, you see we get sort of like the infinite thing. But the thing you want to look at here is over here you've got a drop down which has the camera and the microphone. So you just hit CueCam and CueCam audio, and then you can just record those in QuickTime, and that's no problem. But I actually like using Ecamm Live to record because it works. It has a dynamic button on the Stream Deck which says record when it's not recording and finish when it's went to finish the recording. And I find that, you know, I don't have to switch to Ecamm to record. And if I'm doing a lot of takes, and I'm often doing like, you know, for various reasons I'm doing a lot of screen recordings, I find it quite useful. But it is expensive, so you can do the same thing with OBS, but make sure you choose some sensible output settings. And I thought I would like fire up, you know, let's live dangerously. I'm going to fire up OBS and just quickly show you, just so you know what those video settings should look like. If we come back to the desktop, if we wait for we're waiting for OBS. Maybe it was a terrible idea, and I should not have. A couple of things. Should we see what we're up to on the output of this? Yeah, so NDI runtime. So OBS has where is the window? Ooh. It has settings. It has output, and it has recording. And so basically on a Mac, I would recording format MP4 probably. Rate control, constant bit rate. 3500 is a bit low for something that's local. Maybe 5000 is good. So that's 5 megabits. And then there should be a Mac. Where's the Mac? Oh, encoder. You've got Apple hardware encoder. Apple ProRes, Apple H.264 hardware encoder. So just make sure you pick one of those. So that's and then there's just a start recording button there. So you can do it for free in OBS. You just sort of have to know like how to set up OBS. So that was QuickTime, OBS. Okay, so the next thing is like when you are recording demos, you have this sort of choice. Are you going to do resets? or are you going to use pre-recorded clips as part of your demonstration? So what I mean by that is, like, when you're doing a run through, if if it's not the one, you do need to get it back to a known state each time, because if you start a demo and it's got it's clearly you've already done it like 3 times, or it's like version 6 or like that's very distracting, and it sort of like muddies up what you're trying to show. So it's sort of like if you're a director, if you're on a film set, if you're doing something, it's like everyone back to 1 so that we can sort of reset and do another take. It's the same for software demos. You sort of need a way of resetting that thing each time. Or you can pre-record and reuse video clips. And so you can sort of use the video from a clip and then like voice over it. And that's another, and you can still be picture in picture in eCam. You can just take the clip in, and you can sort of even pretend that you're doing the demo in real time, but it's actually a video clip. So you sort of have these 2 options. I'll go one way or the other depending on what I'm doing, but it's a good idea one reason it's a good idea to do the clips is that then you're sort of building up a bit of a library of clips that can be brought into different demos. So you might have something that's sort of like the same for a few different demos. So it's good to have just a little just a canned screen recording, instead of like every time you got to go and set everything up and reset it and do all this stuff. There's that first slide. So that's, so pre-recording clips. So I use Screenshot on the Mac to pre-record my clips. So this is, you just find it, but just find it through like, Spotlight, just search for Screenshot. It gives you this little interface where you can select, like the microphone, a couple of things, but you can select an area that you want to record. So my tip is like, do the screenshots, do these little screen recordings just with no audio, just in the Screenshot app. And you don't need to record audio, and just try and make that thing 16:9. Now, the annoying thing with the Screenshot app is when you're adjusting the size, you can't like fire up the calculator. So I'll be like, I'll see that it's like 1364 wide. So I'll often get my phone out and go, Siri, what is 16 divided by 9 times 1364? And then it will I'll do it that way to sort of like, so that I don't have to like cancel out of the Screenshot app. So that's something, I don't know, maybe we're getting esoteric here, but that's just something I end up doing quite a lot. And when you the good thing about CueCam is these can be quite, especially if you record a lot of the screen, these can be pretty heavy files because they're just recording the full resolution with quite a lossless codec. But what CueCam will do is just like convert that into H.265 when you import it, and just save it in the document, and then it's not going to use quite as much space on your computer. And everything we're doing here is optimized for creating, like, basically for sort of like webcam stuff, which you're not going to really be going over 1080p. And if you're zoomed in, that's cool. And people are going to look at it on their phone. You don't need some 4K video clip, because like someone's looking at it on their phone, they're not going to be able to see anyway. So really, like, the goal is to make this stuff quite big if you can, so that people can see what's going on. When should you pre-record clips? I would say one-off procedures like installation. So installing the camera extension of CueCam Presenter is very much, okay, I need just a clip of that in my library that I can sort of bring in and show, because I don't want to have to reboot the whole computer between each take, because that is going to get very boring. Anything like where you're a bit uncertain, like something that can go wrong, it's good to just get like a clean take, so that you don't sort of like end up, with the tech demo thing where things go wrong. And, like common stuff is really useful to take little clips of. So stuff that is sort of always the same across different use cases, it's good to have like a library of clips. So, sort of build those up, give them good names so you can find them again, and sort of be ready in future for me to provide the ability to find them really quickly. But yeah, for now, it's good to start creating that library. But I do have a vision of being able to search through all of your CueCam docs and just bring in a card from any other document, including the video. And then I think that gets really useful then. But that's not for launch. But if you do want to be resetting every time, The goal is to be able to quickly reset to a known state, and this might mean, like, say you've got a web app, you might need to sort of like go into the admin and like press like delete data or something like that, or like uninstall an app and reinstall it so it's in a fresh state. Or you, but like it's sort of, as a developer, I will make this quite a first class, but I will spend a bit of time on this. So, you know, if I've got a web app, I'll have sort of seeded, I've created a system where I can seed a user's initial state and like what their view of the world is going to look like, so that I can just like press a button and it will reset. So each time I kind of run through the script, I'm kind of starting afresh. So that's, that, as a developer, it's a bit easier to, well, it's not easier, but it's something you have a bit more power to sort of like just rewrite the database or clear it out by using a different database. Or if if you've got an app, you can put things into the app, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a bit. A question on it, we'll come back to that in a minute. But like a question between, should you share a display or should you share a window? When we are talking about desktops. Desktop sharing I like for some situations, so I just dedicate a whole display to so that I can just drag any window onto there and like zoom in on it and sort of like because some things do take multiple apps and it's just easier to be able to drag the windows in there. But window sharing is really useful in CueCam too, because you can just say I want this exact window, and then it sort of doesn't matter where you drag that window now. It's still going to be like filling the display, and also that's how you capture audio. So if you do have a YouTube window, or if you do have like some window that's making sound, that's really nice because you can sort of isolate the audio. I don't really want to take the whole desktop audio, because then like your notifications start interrupting and you don't really know what's going to happen. But I feel like with specific windows, it's quite cool to be able to get the audio from those, because you're going to get an isolated stream from there. And that's how I bring in the Zoom audio as well when I'm doing these things. So that's sort of the difference, really. Picture in picture is always a fun question. Do you want to be sort of, do you want to be down in the corner or not? I like to be down in the corner as much as I can. CueCam's also with a green screen, you can be a bit bigger. We're still sort of a little bit on the fence about how this integrates with Sonoma's new video features. Is it going to do it? Yeah, there we go, fireworks. But I still don't. I need to like live with it for a bit before I decide how I want that to work together. Because you can do the sort of layered backgrounds and this and that. But I mean, feel free if you're on the beta to experiment, and I know John is, and like I know people are. But yeah, picture in picture, I think it's good because when I talk through, I think it's quite useful to be able to sort of gesticulate a bit when I'm sort of sharing my screen. But you could and this sort of relates, like you can do full screen slides to sort of like maybe introduce a persona. So you can just put a big full background image in, and you can sort of say what you're going to say and have an image there. And that can be another way of like providing a bit of variation to the flow. And then another trick from John was the HDMI nubbin. So if you don't have a whole display to dedicate to screen sharing, you can get this thing, which is like just a fake HDMI adapter. It's like $3, and it just makes your computer think it has a display plugged into it, which you can then share in CueCam, and then you can like just make you can sort of see what you're doing through the preview, and you can drag windows on there. There will be a bit of lag to that, but if you're in a tight spot, like if maybe it's I mean, you're not going to be doing that many these sort of high quality software demos while you're traveling, but it is useful to have that option sometimes. And then of course you've always got the power of Video Pencil with these things. So like with Video Pencil, because you can see exactly what's going on the screen, you can be drawing on what's happening. So if I'm sharing my desktop and I can actually, let's make sure that I'm in the picture in picture there. Or is it? Yeah. So I can zoom in from the Video Pencil app and it's actually easier than sort of doing it through the window with Video Pencil. And then you can be like grabbing your laser pointer and going, okay, this is how you select this, and this is how you do this. And then maybe you're sort of going to have to go and click on the thing. How do we use the ChatGPT thing? Okay, type something in here. And you can sort of like, you can do a bit of sort of annotation just by using your iPad as part of this flow. And you can sort of say, okay, you know, text, hello. You can sort of put stuff, you can talk about that. But what I would say is, like, if you are going to do that, I don't know, I feel like it's more useful when you bring videos onto the iPad of your clips than it is maybe, it's still maybe a little bit awkward to do from the computer if you do need to be clicking and stuff. So I will sort of wave the mouse quite a lot usually, but it is sort of cool to sort of have that extra level of pizzazz where you can draw around something and talk about something, but just make sure you kind of like, you know, reset the zoom level and like sort of clear the image before you go to your next CueCam slide. I'm sort of thinking about, do I consider sort of automatically like clearing your image on Video Pencil when you go to the next slide? Or I don't know about that, but you could certainly set up a trigger that would do that. But I mean, it would be annoying to do it on every slide, but yeah, we sort of, I think we need to live a little bit with the Video Pencil thing, especially for sort of like desktop demos where you've got the mouse and keyboard going, and, you know, maybe like the iPad. But another thing on the iPad is you can see what your script is as well, so it will show the teleprompter stuff. You can remote control, so maybe even just for that, it can be quite useful. And you've seen me do it a lot. Like, aside, if you are, you know, if you do go off on a bit of a tangent, but you're sort of like maybe in the corner or maybe you're not even on the screen, just like use a side, like have it mapped to a Stream Deck button or press A when you're in CueCam. Just like try and be on camera if you're talking, not like, don't just sort of have something up and there's a disembodied voice if you start going, you know, talking about something. This makes it really easy to just sort of like come and talk and express and be human for the person that you're talking to. And I'm talking about pre-recorded demos here, but I am also talking about in-person demos as well. So sometimes you're going to be recording, but sometimes you are going to be face-to-face, and that's really useful to be able to just sort of not lose where you are in your demo. So it's not like a screen share where it's like, oh, you stop sharing your screen and it's like, oh, I just wanted to show you this thing, and then you have to start the thing. You just sort of bring it in, bring it out, and you sort of don't lose that flow of the demo. And then really the sort of like, you know, the next level is triggers. So CueCam does give you triggers. So you can on any slide you can add a sort of a URL trigger, you know, one or more URL or keystroke triggers. So one driving use case of this for me when I put it together was if you're demoing a web app, and you've got like maybe 6 different profiles, and you want to, as you go through your script, or for different scripts, you want to jump to the different profiles. This is how you do this. Okay, we're going to go to this profile and go through it. And in Chrome, you can set up a keyboard shortcut to change a profile. So now you can just set up a keyboard trigger in CueCam to automatically jump you to the right profile when you get to that section of your demo. So you can imagine, like, just even keyboard shortcuts, you could be sort of like resetting or switching profiles. URL triggers, if your app happens to support certain things, especially if you built it, like you could make a URL trigger that's like, show me this profile, or reset the, you know, go to the test database and fill it with this content. And you could have that just automatically be triggered as you come onto that slide, or as you sort of like start your script again. So there's a lot of power to that. If you want to sort of like, you know, sort of be able to run through for recording, but then, you know, particularly for when you're doing it in front of someone, like with a customer or whatever on camera, and you want to sort of take them through everything. And of course, like, you know, the Stream Deck, I like a minimal approach to Stream Deck. Some people have like multiple Stream Decks and they have every single thing mapped to a button, but I think that's a lot of overhead when you're trying to communicate. But you know, don't forget, you can always jump out and sort of, you know, hit a button. So, you know, whenever I share my desktop, I'm just hitting my desktop Stream Deck button, so that I don't have that set up on a card or anything. But also, you know, in CueCam, you've got this, you've got the kind of the camera things here. So we can sort of like select something from here. The mouse is offset on that demo. That's weird. That's definitely Apple and not me though. So you can sort of like add text and something, you can even, you can sort of do ad hoc stuff either with the Stream Deck or with the, with these little sort of panels that we've got in CueCam. And then, yeah, just something, just to come back to demo modes. Every app I've ever built where I'm making docs or anything, my audio, have I slipped? Okay, let me just... Okay, hopefully my audio is feeling a bit better. It's nice to be demonstrating with a little bit of sort of people telling me if things are going wrong. Is that sounding okay? Should I do it again? Or is it, maybe I'm just... I think it might be a memory thing, to be honest. Right, I'm going to freeze for a few seconds. Be patient. We don't like the crackles. I'm back. Hopefully that's good. I'm just going to make 100% sure. It is nice to know why this thing has happened, even if it's not like completely resolved yet. Making software is hard. Right, where are we? We were at demo modes. Yeah, so I was just saying, like, every piece of software I've ever built where I've had to make docs or videos or screenshots, I have added a demo mode with example content. Video apps, it can be really important because you sort of get video feedback and things like that. So that's why, like, CueCam Presenter has this demo mode, not just to be snazzy, but because it's really awkward to sort of like show what it does sometimes without something like that, because you end up getting feedback and all sorts of different things. But like even like my a mood tracking app that I've made, I've sort of created like an alternative set. I can turn on a certain configuration so that I can get my screenshots and things. Like, it's just really important to have a little bit of get your fingers in there somehow so that you have some control over what the state of the app is going to be, because it's really tedious having to sort of do it by hand every time, and if there's not an easy way of like regressing or reverting or deleting, then that's quite painful. But like, so the crux of this really, well, is it the crux? But an important point is I think no two demos are the same. I find there's a lot of problem solving in this. To show something, I often, like, particularly with Shoot, and if I've got an iPad app running and a Mac app running, like, figuring out how to actually capture that can be quite complex. But even if you're just on the desktop, it can take some thinking to figure out how you're going to do this. And so it is a bit of a production process. It is a bit of a problem solving process. And you've got, even if just, you've got to think about the world outside of the software, think about the person that's coming to it and what, how they're going to use it. But you've also got to populate, if you've got screenshots or if you're showing a demo, like, you've got to come up with some realistic content that someone would realistically have in there. And that's probably not the stuff you've been, as a developer, you're putting like A's, like typing random stuff to check that the text fields work. But you need to like sort of consider what is going to sort of not detract from what you're trying to show by coming up with some realistic content. Again, like, we are in the sort of AI generated stuff era, so it's a bit easier to sort of come up with that kind of thing. But finally, this is why it's so paramount to, I'm hitting my microphone, to start with a script, to start from your imagination, rather than like hitting record and futzing around with like the software. Actually, like, from your imagination, think about what you want to say, put it on some cue cards, and you're already like going to be ahead of most other people doing this, because you're thinking about, oh, what would it be if it was clear. And then, you may sort of simplify and optimize and make things a bit more straightforward, easier to do. But it's really good to start from your imagination and not just from like the desktop in front of you. So, and just a final, I was going to talk a bit more about like doing it live, but I think this is good. This is like, I'm trying to keep these sessions to like 45 minutes. I like editing in Descript for various reasons. Final Cut, DaVinci, these other things, the timeline things, it can be quite cumbersome, and like, especially if you're just talking and you're talking on camera. Descript is great because it just turns your video into a script and you can just read through and you can edit it as words instead of like having to sort of learn what different words look like on the audio timeline in Final Cut and wait for it to regenerate the audio waveform every time you zoom out a little bit. It's so annoying in Final Cut. I used to edit 2 hours of podcast footage, and like anytime you touch the wrong thing, the audio waveform resets. But that's by the by. The real goal of editing in Descript is just, get a really good take so it's natural, but then you can just tighten it up a bit. Sort of take out some of those ums and ahs, take out some of the, the bit where it went a bit off track, and just like sort of, because I think the goal with these software demos is like keep it concise. Don't waste people's time. Don't make them, okay, sure, they can just play it at 2 speed. Often I'm like playing stuff at double speed just to find the bit where they tell me the thing I want to do. But if you can just sort of like respect people's time and like keep it really tight and really clear, that's sort of my goal with what I'm doing, is to sort of give stuff that's good. So that's sort of like, what I cobbled together this afternoon about doing software demos. So I'm just, like that's sort of, that'll do for now. I'm open to questions if you do have any thoughts or questions, but I'm going to say, if not, that's it from me for this week. And actually today is my last week in London. Packing up, moving 400 miles north to Edinburgh in Scotland. I still need to pack my studio. The audio gear has been put in a box that usually sits here just behind me, so my synth isn't there and all the stuff, but there's a lot more stuff to pack in here. So we are moving. We are making a very big life change with this move. So next week I will hopefully be broadcasting from our rented spare room while we sort of start our house hunting process. So it may be a bit more echoey, depending. Maybe I'll I'll try and use their voice isolation or something. But yeah, that's it from me. Let me know if you've got any thoughts, any questions. I see a nice safe travels from James. Thank you. And yes, it's going to be an exciting time. Hopefully all our stuff fits in the van. So, thanks. So yeah, if you want to find me out of hours, between sessions, Squares TV Discord, thanks for joining me today. I know attention is in short supply, so I really appreciate it. And I will hopefully see you next time. And I'm really hoping to have some good news on CueCam soon.